If you think economics is just those supply and demand curves you had to memorize back in school, you are in for a treat. We're about to go way beyond the textbook to uncover the hidden rules that are actually driving our world. We're talking about everything from why it's so hard to find a good used car, to why losing 20 bucks feels so much worse than the joy of finding it. So let's get into it and pull back the curtain on the hidden rules of your world.
See, your standard textbook assumes this, perfect world, right? Where everyone is perfectly rational, has all the information they need, and every transaction is self-contained. But you and I both know life is way, way messier than that. We're often irrational, one person almost always knows more than the other, and our choices constantly create these spillover effects. Today, we're going to explore 4 massive concepts that explain this messy, real-world economy we all live in.
So, first up, what happens when an economic choice doesn't just stay between the buyer and the seller? What about the things we all have to share, or the unintended side effects of what we do? This is all about shared goods and spillovers.
Okay, let's start with this idea of a public good. And a great way to think about it is a radio broadcast. It's got 2 really special properties. First, it's non-rival. Me listening to the radio doesn't stop you from listening to the exact same broadcast. And second, it's non-excludable. The radio station can't really stop anyone with a radio from tuning in, even if they never, ever donate.
And this concept really starts to click when you see it in the real world. Think about a streetlight on your block. You can't really stop your neighbor from using its light, can you? And your use doesn't make it any dimmer for them. Well, the same thing goes for national defense, or clean air, or even public parks. These are all classic public goods.
So here's the kicker. If you can't force people to pay for something and they can get it for free, why would a private company ever bother to provide it? This leads to what's called the free rider problem. We all want nice parks and safe streets, but we're all kind of hoping someone else pays the bill. Because of this, the free market, left to its own devices, just doesn't produce enough of these really important things. And that's usually why the government has to step in.
All right, now let's talk about those spillovers. Economists have a fancier name for them: externalities. Imagine your neighbor decides to throw a massive, super loud party on a Tuesday night. That noise? That's a perfect negative externality. It's a spillover cost from their party that you're stuck with, and you're not getting paid to deal with it.
But hey, spillovers can be a good thing too. A positive externality is a benefit you didn't pay for. Like, maybe your neighbor plants a beautiful garden and it makes the whole street look better, maybe even bumps up your property value. The weird problem is, because the person creating that benefit doesn't get all the rewards, the market leads to an underconsumption of these good things. And on the flip side, with negative externalities like pollution, the factory doesn't pay the full cost, so the market overproduces the bad stuff. So what do we do about all this? Well, governments have a few tools in their toolbox. They can tax the bad stuff, like a carbon tax on pollution, to make the polluter feel the true cost. They can subsidize the good stuff, like giving grants for education, to encourage more of it. Or sometimes they just regulate it directly and say, nope, you can't dump that in the river.
Okay, let's move on to our second big idea. What happens when, in any given deal, one person knows a whole lot more than the other? This is the huge problem of the information gap.
This is officially known as information asymmetry. It's just a fancy way of saying a transaction is lopsided because one side has way more or better information. And once you know what it is, you start seeing it absolutely everywhere. In job interviews, when you buy insurance, and of course, in the classic example, the market for used cars.
Let's just play this out. You're trying to buy a used car. The person selling it knows everything about it, right? They know all its little quirks, any hidden rust, the real reason they're selling it. But you, the buyer, you know almost nothing. You're flying blind. And you've got this nagging fear that you might be buying a lemon, a car that looks shiny on the outside but is a total dud underneath.
Now, this hidden information problem creates something economists call adverse selection. Think about it. Because you can't tell the great cars from the lemons, you're probably not willing to pay a top dollar price. You'll offer something in the middle, an average price. But that average price is too low for the person selling a genuinely great car. So what do? They take their car off the market. And what does that leave behind? You guessed it, a market that's full of lemons.
But here's the cool part. Markets are clever. They've actually evolved some really smart solutions to this problem. Sellers can signal their quality. That's what a college degree or a professional certification is all about. Buyers can screen for quality. That's what a job interview or a skills test is designed to do. And in the car market, a fantastic solution is the warranty. It's basically the seller putting their money where their mouth is to prove their car isn't a lemon.
Okay, so we've seen how shared goods and information gaps can really mess with those perfect market theories. But what if the biggest problem isn't the market? What if the problem is us? Let's dive into this super fascinating world of the human factor.
Just pause and really think about this for a second. If you're like most people, the answer is a definite yes. The pain of losing something feels way more powerful, way more intense than the pleasure of gaining the exact same thing. And that one simple, very human quirk has massive economic consequences.
This is the huge idea at the heart of behavioral economics. It basically throws out that old assumption that we're all just perfectly rational calculating machines. Instead, it mashes up economics and psychology to understand our biases, our mental shortcuts, and how we actually make decisions out here in the real world.
So we just talked about loss aversion, that sting of losing. Then you've got overconfidence, the fact that most of us think we're an above-average driver. And there's status quo bias. That's the powerful force that makes us stick with the default settings on our phone or in our retirement plan, even when there are way better options available. These biases are shaping our economic lives every single day, whether we realize it or not.
All right, for our fourth and final frontier, let's look at the world in a totally new way. What if a ton of our economic decisions aren't made in a vacuum, but are actually strategic moves in a giant game that we're all playing with each other?
Welcome to the world of game theory. And now, it's not about video games. It's the study of any situation where the results of your decision depends heavily on what other people choose to do. Just think about two gas stations across the street from each other. The best price for one to set depends entirely on the price the other one sets. It's a strategic game.
And the most famous example in all of game theory has to be the prisoner's dilemma. Okay, here's the setup. It's like something out of a movie. Two partners in crime get arrested. The police put them in separate interrogation rooms so they can't talk to each other. Then, the police offer each one the exact same deal. You can confess and implicate your partner, or you can stay silent. So what do? Let's break it down from suspect A's point of view. Let's say he thinks suspect B is going to stay silent. Well, A is better off confessing because he gets 0 years instead of 1. Now let's say he thinks suspect B is going to confess. Well, A is still better off confessing because he'll get 5 years instead of 10. So you see, no matter what B does, A's best, most rational move is to confess. And the exact same logic applies to suspect B. So what happens? They both confess, and they both get 5 years, even though they would have both been better off if they had just trusted each other and stayed silent. Okay, let's wrap this all up. These different frontiers of microeconomics, they aren't just some abstract theories for a classroom. They're actually incredibly powerful lenses that help us see and understand the hidden logic behind the world all around us.
You're basically leaving here today with a brand new toolkit for seeing the economy. From now on, when you see a public park, you'll think about the free rider problem. When you get a warranty on a new gadget, you'll see a solution to information asymmetry. When you find yourself hesitating to sell a stock that's losing money, you'll recognize loss aversion at work. And when you see two huge companies getting into a price war, you'll know they're stuck in a game.
And that's really the big takeaway here. These forces are operating everywhere, all the time, quietly shaping your decisions and the world you live in. So, I'll leave you with this question. Now that you know the hidden rules, which one are you going to spot in action first?